The first day of a new semester always had a certain electricity about it. Lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking against the linoleum floors, and chatter bouncing off the high ceilings like a constant hum of static. At Lincoln High, that electricity seemed to crackle even louder whenever something or someone new disrupted the usual rhythm. That morning, the disruption was Aaliyah Johnson. She stepped through the front doors with a posture that demanded attention. Not in an arrogant way. No, it was something subtler. Her back was straight, her chin lifted, and her eyes scanning the halls with the quiet precision of someone used to sizing up her surroundings. Her new cheerleading uniform clung perfectly to her athletic frame, and the crimson bow in her hair bounced with each step. Students turned. Some out of curiosity, some out of judgment. Whispers began almost immediately. "Who's the new girl?" one boy muttered near his locker, tugging at his varsity jacket. "She's on the cheer team already?" a girl scoffed, arms crossed. "She just got here." "Look at her hair. I mean, is that even regulation?" Another sneered. Aaliyah heard it all. She always did. Her father had taught her long ago that you never ignored your environment. "Awareness is survival," he used to say. But instead of showing them that their words stung, she smiled. A small, almost imperceptible curl of her lips that only confused the crowd more. The cheer squad was gathered near the trophy case, practicing hand movements for their next routine. Their leader, Brittany Collins, was impossible to miss. Blonde, tall, with the kind of confidence that came from years of being told she was the best. Her perfectly manicured hands clapped in rhythm as she barked orders. When she noticed Aaliyah, her eyes narrowed. "Oh, so this is the new recruit coach wouldn't stop raving about," Brittany announced loudly enough for half the hallway to hear. "Guess they'll just let anyone on the team these days." The other girls giggled, feeding off her energy. But Aaliyah didn't flinch. She walked straight up, extended a hand, and said calmly, "Hi, I'm Aaliyah. Nice to meet you." Brittany looked at her hand like it was something contagious. Then, deliberately, she turned her back and said, "Girls, let's get back to work." The laughter stung more than Aaliyah would admit, but she refused to let them see it. Instead, she inhaled deeply, remembering what her father drilled into her during late-night backyard training sessions. The louder they are, the weaker they are inside. Don't ever show them your fear. But the whispers didn't stop. Why'd coach even pick her? She doesn't belong here. She's probably only here because they needed diversity. Aaliyah's jaw clenched, but she kept walking toward her first class. Her sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as she weaved through clusters of students. She reminded herself that fitting in wasn't her goal. She didn't move to this town to please Brittany or her friends. She came here because her father's Navy reassignment left them with no choice. Yet as she slid into her desk in English, class, she couldn't shake the awareness that she had already been marked. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from her dad. "How's the first day, champ?" Aaliyah smiled faintly. She didn't want him to worry. He had enough weight on his shoulders. "It's fine, just the usual new kid stuff," she replied. But deep down, she knew this was just the beginning. High school wasn't a battlefield in the traditional sense, but the tactics weren't all that different. And if Brittany thought she could break her with whispers and laughter, she had another thing coming. What nobody in that hallway realized was this: Aaliyah Johnson wasn't just another new face. She was the daughter of a man who had stared down enemies in deserts and jungles, who had spent years teaching his daughter resilience, discipline, and the art of fighting battles you couldn't always see. To them, she looked like prey. But Aaliyah knew something they didn't. Prey doesn't smile at the predator. Predators don't realize they've already lost until it's too late. The cafeteria at Lincoln High was a jungle disguised as a lunchroom. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, long tables stretched across the polished floor, and the noise level was an overwhelming blend of laughter, chatter, and clattering trays. For new students, it was the one place where alliances were visible and social hierarchies were carved into stone. Aaliyah walked in holding her tray carefully, chicken nuggets, an apple, and a carton of milk. She scanned the tables, noting the groups. The football players dominated the center. The art kids clustered near the far wall, their sketchbooks open between bites. The cheerleaders? They sat front and center, Brittany presiding over them like royalty on a throne. Every step Aaliyah took drew eyes. She could feel the weight of stares, hear the whispers building like a rising tide. That's her. Why's she walking over? Here? She's seriously gonna try and sit with them. Aaliyah's instinct told her to keep moving, maybe find a quieter corner to eat alone. But something inside her resisted. Why should I hide? She thought. Why should I let them push me into the shadows? So she walked toward the cheerleader's table. Brittany noticed immediately. Her lips curled into a grin that spelled trouble. She leaned toward the girl next to her, whispered something, and the whole group burst into laughter. Aaliyah slowed but didn't stop. She was only a few feet from the table when it happened. Brittany stretched her leg just slightly, subtle enough to look like an accident, deliberate enough to be cruel. Aaliyah's foot caught on the extended sneaker, and in one horrifying instant, her tray flipped forward. Nuggets flew like projectiles, milk splattered across the table, and spaghetti from another tray slid right onto her uniform. The cafeteria erupted. Phones shot into the air, recording from every angle. Laughter rippled across the room like a wave. Did you see that? Oh my God, it's all over her. Welcome to Lincoln High, loser. For a heartbeat, Aaliyah froze. Her uniform was ruined, sauce dripping down her front, her tray lying upside down on the floor. Her ears burned with humiliation, and her throat tightened. She wanted, more than anything, to run. But she didn't. Instead, she forced herself to stand tall. She wiped her hands slowly, deliberately, then turned her head and locked eyes with Brittany. The laughter dimmed just slightly. Something in her gaze unsettled them. Aaliyah stepped closer, leaned down and whispered so only Brittany could hear. You'll regret that. It wasn't a threat screamed across the room. It wasn't an outburst of anger. It was calm, controlled, like a soldier promising an inevitable strike. Brittany blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. But then she laughed, loud and sharp. Whatever you say, newbie. The cafeteria roared again, but the energy had shifted. While everyone else thought they had just witnessed a victory for Brittany, something in Aaliyah's posture told a different story. As she walked away, whispers followed her. But not all of them were mocking anymore. Some were curious. Some were impressed. Brittany forced a laugh to cover her unease, but deep inside she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Doubt. That evening, Aaliyah sat at the kitchen table, poking at her dinner. Her mother, tired from a long shift at the hospital, glanced at her stained uniform draped over a chair. What happened to that? She asked. Aaliyah hesitated. She didn't want to burden her mom. But before she could answer, the front door opened, and in walked Marcus Johnson. Even in civilian clothes, he carried himself with the weight of discipline. His broad shoulders filled the doorway, his eyes scanning the room instinctively before softening as they landed on his daughter. He didn't miss the uniform. He didn't miss the way she sat with slumped shoulders, chewing slowly like her thoughts were heavier than her food. What happened, champ? He asked, his voice steady. Aaliyah sighed. It's nothing, Dad, just some kids at school. Marcus stepped closer, pulling out the chair beside her. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. You know I can tell when you're holding back. She looked up at him, frustration breaking through. They humiliated me, Dad, in front of everyone, and all I could do was stand there. Marcus studied her for a moment, then stood. Come with me." They walked into the backyard, where floodlights lit up the grass. To anyone else, it was just a yard. To them, it was a training ground. Aaliyah had spent countless evenings out here, sweating under her father's watchful eye. "Drop down. 20 push-ups," he ordered. Aaliyah groaned. "Dad!" "Now." She obeyed. Her arms burned as she lowered herself, her father counting each rep. When she finished, he handed her a pair of focus mitts. "Hit!" She began throwing punches, the sharp thwack of her fists echoing through the night. Marcus guided her movements, correcting her stance, making her faster, sharper, more precise. "You think today was a loss?" he asked between strikes. "It felt like one," she admitted, jabbing harder. "Wrong. Today was reconnaissance. You learned your enemy, you saw how they operate, and now you prepare." Aaliyah's punches grew stronger, her breath coming in steady bursts. Sweat dripped down her face, but her eyes glowed with determination. "They want you to feel small," Marcus continued. "They want you to believe you don't belong. But listen to me, Aaliyah. Belonging isn't something they get to decide. It's something you prove." When the session ended, Aaliyah collapsed onto the grass, exhausted but smiling. Her father knelt beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Next time they try to knock you down, you'll be ready. Not because you fight like them, but because you're stronger than them." Aaliyah nodded, her chest rising and falling. She wasn't just a cheerleader anymore. She was training for war on her battlefield, Lincoln High. Friday night lights blazed across the stadium. The bleachers were packed, fans painted in school colors, the roar of excitement filling the air. On the sidelines, the cheerleaders stretched and prepped, their pom-poms glittering under the lights. Aaliyah stood at the edge of the group, calm but alert. The memory of spaghetti and laughter still lingered, but so did her father's words. Tonight she wasn't here to blend in. She was here to show them who she was. The routine began smoothly. Chants, flips, perfectly synchronized movements. Brittany led with practiced confidence, but every time Aaliyah moved, the crowd's cheers seemed to grow louder. Brittany noticed, and it burned her. When the pyramid stunt began, Brittany seized her chance. As Aaliyah climbed into position, Brittany shifted her weight just enough to shove her off balance. Gasps filled the air as Aaliyah fell, but instead of crashing, she twisted mid-air, her training kicking in, landing gracefully on her feet. The crowd erupted in cheers, louder than the football game itself. Without missing a beat, Aaliyah improvised. She sprinted forward, executed a flawless round-off back handspring, and landed in a perfect split, thrusting the megaphone into the air. "Lincoln High! Let's go!" she shouted. The stadium exploded. Fans stomped, clapped, and screamed her name. Phones recorded from every angle. The other cheerleaders stared in shock, Brittany frozen in place. She had planned to humiliate Aaliyah. Instead, she had just handed her the spotlight. As the routine ended, the crowd chanted Aaliyah's name. Brittany's face turned pale. Her control over the squad and the school was slipping. And Aaliyah? She stood in the center of the field, chest heaving, eyes blazing. She wasn't just the new girl anymore. She was the star. The following Monday, Brittany wasn't ready to give up. With her friends flanking her, she cornered Aaliyah in the parking lot after school. "Think you're hot stuff now, huh?" Brittany sneered. "You embarrassed me in front of the whole school. You're gonna pay for that." Aaliyah stood tall, meeting her gaze without fear. "I didn't embarrass you. You did that all by yourself." The words stung, but before Brittany could react, the rumble of a black SUV filled the air. It pulled up beside them, engine low and powerful. Marcus Johnson stepped out. The Bullies fell silent. Marcus wasn't dressed in uniform, but his presence commanded attention. His posture was straight, his jaw set, his eyes sharp as steel. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Brittany tried to laugh. No, sir, we were just... Marcus stepped closer, his gaze locking onto hers. Listen carefully. I've faced enemies twice your size and 10 times as ruthless. Do you think for 1 second you scare my daughter? Brittany's smirk vanished. The girls shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other before slowly backing away. Aaliyah smiled faintly, pride swelling in her chest. For the first time since she arrived, she felt truly unshakable. As the bullies scattered, Marcus turned to her, his expression softening. You handled yourself well, champ. I'm proud of you. Aaliyah nodded, her heart racing. She wasn't just a cheerleader. She wasn't just the new girl. She was the daughter of a Navy SEAL, trained, resilient, unstoppable, and from that day forward, nobody dared to mess with her again.